We are recording. Girli, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Whereabouts are you today?
I am in my half-decorated bedroom in London. Yeah, I've been doing well. I'm a very DIY person. So sometimes I take that too far and do things that I just really can't do, like putting wallpaper up. So yeah, we're in a process. It's a process. That's where
Are,
I am.
are you one of them people that kind of has these kind of like, because this is me all over, where I have them ideas of like, do you know what? I'm just going to crack this out today. And then about 2 hours in, I think, oh, fuck, why did I start this? It's taking
Yes.
forever.
Oh my God, 100%. Like, and I'll tell my girlfriend, like, when you come back, this whole room is going to be finished. And then it's obviously not at all. Yeah, I'm definitely a big, like, I'm not someone who starts projects and never finishes them, but I'm definitely someone who has unrealistic expectations of how quick things will take.
Yeah,
So,
I'm with you on that. That's me all over, mate. Um, I'm going to ask you to kick off your playlist, and we always start with this question. And I'm going to ask you to tell me the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
I would say Purple Rain by Prince, just because that intro like never fails to just send chills all over my body and good chills. I just think it's so beautiful. I mean, that whole song, I mean, I think especially nowadays where songs are getting shorter and shorter and shorter because of people's attention spans, the fact that that was, that was and is like a massive hit song and it's like what 8 minutes long or something or
Mm.
7 minutes. um, yeah, I'm just obsessed with that song, and I think that intro, it just, I don't know, it just gets me every time.
Fantastic choice. No one's ever chose that. So we're over 550 episodes in. The normal go-to Prince track is "Let's Go Crazy" because that's got the
Mm.
dearly beloved. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That is really good. I think, yeah, the thing with Purple Rain is actually the intro isn't like, it's not separate from the rest of the song. It's not like this, separate kind of entity or concept, but it just, any time that comes on, it's one of those songs where I don't think if it was being played somewhere, I don't think the DJ would skip to when the vocals start. Like you have to play the
100.
whole intro has to like lead into it. So yeah.
You sort of preempted one of my questions a moment ago when you said that in a world where attention spans are getting smaller, and we're seeing more sort of commercial pop music kicking straight off with a chorus. And I mean, if you were to take Purple Rain to a record company now as an unsigned artist, they'd be like, "What the hell's this? It's 8 minutes. It's that's not
Yeah.
going to work
Yeah.
on TikTok." And all of them kind of strange things. But as somebody who is you know young and in a in a pop market, do you do any of them sort of things in regards to um, the shortening of songs and where people are getting their music now, like things like TikTok and Spotify, where you are awash with artists and you've got to stand out, you've got to grab them. Does any of that, if at all, factor into your creative process?
I think I try as much as possible for it to not, because I think that it's kind of the same as like, pre-TikTok and even pre the internet, like, it's artists, telling artists to write songs that are radio friendly. That wouldn't be conducive to something just completely authentic to them, and I think it's the same as now, like, going into the studio and thinking, okay, I've got to write a TikTok song or, you know, a song where the first 5 seconds grabs people or they'll skip on, Spotify or whatever. It's just not, I don't think you're going to come out with your best songs, your best work. So, but it's definitely comes into a lot of the like the visual process, like creating the videos and, because now when you go to create a music video, to be honest, like for me, marketing my songs visually, like videos taken on a phone from the music video shoot will probably end up seeing more people than the actual music video sitting on YouTube. So that definitely comes into it. I mean, I know, there are definitely a lot of songs that are written for TikTok. And you can kind of, I don't know, I think you can kind of tell in a way. I think the lyrics end up being a bit throwaway because they grab your attention, but then what do they mean in the context of like there's not much of a sort of deeper meaning, but I
Do
don't
you
know.
think that is an art form in itself, though?
For sure. I mean, like there's definitely an argument for that, 100%. I think, there are some songs that I've found through TikTok where I'm like, wow, this is great because it is just like that 30 seconds is so catchy and is so hooky and um so I've found so much great music through TikTok, definitely. But I think also then going and like deep diving on those songs, a lot of them you're like, oh my God, there's this amazing second verse that like no one gives a shit about
Yeah.
because all they care about is that one hook. And I think it's also especially it's a shame for artists where one song or one part of a song might get loads of recognition, but then the rest of their catalog no one cares about because the albums aren't consumed in the same way anymore. It's like one song on its own. But I think also then you've got the other side of that where vinyl is huge again, and like people are like loving consuming full albums again. So I think there's like two sides to it.
I want to pick back up on that in a few questions' time because you said something that I think is really interesting there. But before we sort of get to that, I want to take you back first, and I want to ask you for track two, please, to tell me the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
So the first song I remember hearing, and again, I have a like scarily bad memory, which is a whole nother conversation. But I remember hearing Into My Arms by Nick Cave because it was the song that played at my parents' wedding when I was like two. And I remember my parents' wedding very vaguely, but I remember that song just being around when I was a kid. And
Mate, you have got cool parents. Nick
yeah,
Cave for your
yeah.
wedding song. That's amazing.
Yeah, they have very good music taste. And my dad's Australian, so Nick Cave being an Aussie, he's Aussie, right?
Yeah.
I just suddenly was like, maybe he's not. Yeah, so that song had a huge impact on me and emotionally. It's just, oh, it's so beautiful. It gets me every time. It like makes me cry every time. And yeah, just the lyrics about, I don't believe in an interventionist God, but if I did, I'd tell him to watch over you. And I don't believe in angels, but looking at you, I wonder if that's true. And it's just like, so it's so good,
Yeah, that's as close to perfect as it gets, that record. I couldn't
amazing.
agree with you more there. Um, you said that your dad's from Australia. Tell us a little bit about growing up, where it was, what home was like. I'm presuming it was quite a musical environment.
Yeah, so I grew up in London. My dad's Australian, and my mum's English. My parents are both actors, so growing up with with actor parents was really cool. I think it's interesting because to me that was just my parents' jobs, so I didn't understand that was until I was a little bit older, um, that was different. I just thought that was normal that your parents were on stage and you could see them on TV and but then I started to realize when I, got to like 8 or 9, 10, I was like, oh, this is actually so cool. And they did a lot of theater. So the idea of going on stage and performing was like such a enthralling idea to me. I think that's where the idea of me of performing on stage in a musical way came to me. And yeah, they were my mum did, or both of my parents did a lot at Shakespeare's Globe, so I loved like how theatrical that was, all the old costumes, and I loved um, Shakespeare and the amazing storytelling of that. And yeah, they had, my dad had amazing, my mum too, but my dad was a proper music person and he had such good taste and was into a lot of very current music at the time. So he bought the first Arctic Monkeys album and the first Scissor Sisters album, and he loved Lily Allen. She was coming up, and Amy Winehouse was always on in the car, and stuff like that. And that, at the time was all super current. So I think all of those were huge influences on me when I started making music, and especially lyrically, like all those artists were so sharp and
Yeah,
authentic and clever with their lyrics. So that was really inspiring to me.
yeah. And was you a confident kid? Like, seeing your parents on stage, was that something that, did that instill an element of sort of confidence in you?
I was confident and outgoing, and then I think when I became a teenager, well, sort of 11, 12 until 16, my confidence massively dipped just because, I mean, A, you're a teenager. And then B, I think I, that sort of outwardness and that quirkiness, I guess, meant that I got picked on quite a lot. So it sort of, I kind of went into my shell a bit more. And then I discovered music more. I became, as a teenager, like, started going to gigs and started discovering my own artists and bands that I loved. And that's when performing kind of took off for me as a way of escapism in a way, because
Yeah.
primary school, I really enjoyed primary school. Secondary school was like hell on earth. So then finding a sort of way out of that through music was, yeah, like, saving grace.
It's so interesting you say that. Um, so many artists that I've spoken to on this, whether they be actors, comedians, musicians, will say they loved primary school. Everyone loves primary school because there's no pressure, there's no expectation. Everybody's quite pure at that point, aren't they? And I think
Yeah.
you get to secondary school and your bodies change and everybody's changing. And it is a horrible assault course to get through, isn't it? And I think you're
Oh,
searching
yeah.
for your tribe, you're searching for who you are. And I think when you sort of get out of school and if you sort of then choose to go to college or choose to work, whatever, and you find, you're not thrust in this environment with these people that you don't want to be around. You can pick your tribe. And when you find your tribe, I think it's at that point that you look back and just go, oh, fuck secondary school, man. That was
Oh my God.
tough, man.
Yeah. Oh my God, like brutal. You could not pay me a million bucks to go back and do that
Yeah.
again. No way. Like that. And I think, it is interesting because whenever if I walk past or drive past like a secondary school, I'm like, oh my God, that was actually crazy that you were going through all these there's all these people going through all this change, and then like there's so much insecurity and there's so much like trying to figure yourself out, but you're all like stuck like in this small, you know, building and playground. And it literally, I mean, oh, it's my dog, sorry. It literally is like it's like, feels like prison. You're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, you can't go out and you can't go out and figure it out. Yeah, exactly. With people who are like you, you're just stuck with whoever's in
Yeah.
your class. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
Well,
rough.
it's fitting that we're talking about school, because I'm going to ask you for track three to tell me
Yeah.
a song that makes you think of your time at school.
So it is Suck It and See by Arctic Monkeys. I was Arctic Monkeys, I was in I think I was like doing my GCSEs when AM came out. And yeah, when AM came out, and that I remember buying that on vinyl, and it was like I had, I asked my parents for, I think my mum had her old really, really chunky record player from the 80s or something. It wasn't like cute and, vintage. It was just like this so unnecessarily chunky,
Yeah.
like, um, you know, big black like speakers and then the vinyl thing, and it wasn't pretty, but it was, it was a vinyl player. So I had that, and I was like, please, can I have it in my room? She was like, okay, it takes up so much space, but okay. And then I bought AM on vinyl, and me and my best friend at school were just completely obsessed. We knew all those songs back to back, but we also then like we knew all of the like Arctic Monkeys like discography. We knew everything. And I remember when I think it was like my first, like I went to um my first ever house party, and we were listening to Arctic Monkeys there, and I remember my friend saying this particular line from Stuck It in C, which is your kiss it would put creases in the rain. And I just remember being so enthralled by, I mean, like Alex Turner's like lyricism is, I mean, genius. I think he's one of the best lyric writers of all time. And yeah, I just like that song transports me back to drinking like horrible cheap vodka at a house party and my friend saying that lyric and listening to that album on vinyl, and it was that was great. That was the one of the good parts about high school.
Did you know what you wanted to be when you was at school?
I wanted to be so many different things. I only realized that I wanted to be a singer, songwriter, artist when I was 15, um, because I went to a show of this band, Tegan and Sarah, in London. They're a Canadian band, but they were touring, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, that this is what I want to do. Like it was just this so crystal clear. I was like, this is it. Like I think seeing a room. It was at Troxy in Limehouse, and I just remember seeing this, 2,000, 3,000 people just completely in the palm of these people's hand. And Tegan and Sarah, their lyrics are very personal, and they are very chatty on stage. That's
Yeah,
kind of, a big thing about their live shows, and they'll just tell stories, and everyone, it was just, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was so enthralled by their stories, and you could tell they, it really meant so much to so many people there. And I just thought, this is what I want to do. I want to tell stories and make music and have, it mean something, like it be like a community, because that's what gigs are, it's like a coming together of people.
yeah,
It's like a music church.
absolutely, absolutely. Can you tell me the first record that you remember buying?
Yes. So it was actually that artist. It was Tegan and Sarah, Heartthrob. But now saying that, there might be competition. Like I can't quite remember if it was AM Arctic Monkeys that I bought first, or that one. But yeah, I remember the Tegan and Sarah one, because it had a big poster, a fold-out poster in it that I plastered on my wall. Oh, sorry. That I plastered on my wall. And yeah, it was like the first thing I saw whenever I walked into my room. Sunny, come here.
Tell me, tell me a little bit, and or the listeners a bit more about Tegan and Sarah, because um, anybody that's ever chose a track by them on this podcast doesn't just like them; they love them, and
Oh
they
yeah.
spoke to them so directly. Tell me a little bit about your love of those.
Yeah, I mean, same. They were so important to me, and still are. I mean, it was their music that made me realize I wanted to make music, but it was also, again, in being bullied and just having a shit time in secondary school, um, their lyrics and how open and honest they were would just hit me so hard, and I really felt understood by these people. And it was like one of the first real like parasocial relationships I remember
Yeah,
having, where I was like, they understand me. And that they did, in a sense, because like their music made me feel understood. And so yeah, they were a big deal. And then also it was the first time I'd heard songs, they're both lesbian, and it was the first time I'd heard songs written about queer love and relationships, by a gay woman, because I think all of the like queerness I'd seen in the media so far had been quite performative, or it had been sort of like fetishized, like I always talk about when Madonna and Britney made out on stage at the VMA, stuff like that, where it's like it wasn't actually gay people
Yeah.
representing, that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
and so having these songs about gay relationships, but it not being like flashy or performative. It was just like, this is the truth, and this is my relationship, that was the breakup, this was this was that. And that was so huge to me as a teenager, figuring out my sexuality as well. And I think that is a big thing for a lot of people, because at the time there really weren't a lot of artists doing that. They were real like pioneers in that sense. And I think especially, if you ask any LGBTQ plus artist, they'll always cite Tegan and Sarah as being, one of those artists who was just so inspiring, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to move on a little bit, and we're going to talk about clubbing. And I'm going to
Mhm.
ask you to tell me the track that soundtrack. I mean, I say soundtracked your years clubbing. You're still brand new. You should still be out clubbing. But tell me a track that did soundtrack some of your years clubbing.
Interestingly enough, I'm not really out clubbing anymore. I've become a lot more of a like day activities person.
Mm.
And then when I'm on tour, I like it flips the other way, and I'm like suddenly a night person. But I had a really difficult time deciding this song, because there were so many different kinds, like
You
genres
can
of
you
music.
can you can have some honourable mentions.
Okay, cool. Well, because the thing for me is like when I started going out and clubbing, I was, still a teenager, and I was going to raves. And so that was a lot of drum and bass and house music, um, which I like loved. And that was my first experience of sort of like nightlife. And then in my sort of early 20s, I started going to a lot more sort of like, I guess like trashy pop nights, really. So the song that I've put down as that soundtracked my clubbing was Dancing on My Own by Robin, just because I have this really specific memory of, there was this night called You Suck that happened once a month on a Friday at Birthdays, which was that venue in
Dalston.
Dalston.
Mm.
Yeah, which then became a Brewdog for a bit, which sucked, and then now is called Divine, which is like a new gay club. So that's great. It's been returned to like nightlife. Um, but I remember Birthdays, like Dalston Festival was such an area where I went out so much, because especially when I was still like 17, none of the bouncers asked for ID at any of the clubs along that road. So I remember just hopping from like club to club. Um, but Birthdays, this was when I was, yeah, like 19, 20. I used to go to USUC every time, and a big group of us, like friends, always went, and they just played breakup songs from, you know, every decade basically. And they always played Dancing on My Own by Robin, like always. And I yeah, I remember just every time that came on, the whole room just exploded, because that's like the ultimate breakup song basically. Um but
And it's
yeah, I mean,
amazing. It's so amazing, that song.
it's so good. I mean, I'm such a big Robin fan. I mean, like, ugh, she's incredible. And that song is just, it's just so special, because it's so, yeah, it's so her, and it's so like different. But also it's just, as soon as you hear that like that sub, it's like, you know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talk about great intros as well. That one's so short as well, but everyone knows it. It's like, ah. So yeah.
Fantastic choice. Fantastic choice.
Mhm.
Um, you've, I mean, you said that your parents were actors, which is a really tough industry to have success in. Um,
Yeah.
you've now chosen the music industry. I mean, that's a breeze, isn't it? I mean, that's equally as tough to have a career within. So I asked you earlier about confidence. I now want to speak to you a little bit about drive and how driven you are, because I'm presuming you're quite driven because you're in a very competitive industry. Tell me
Mm.
about your relationship with drive.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a really, really ambitious person. I've always, even when, before I wanted to do music, I was really interested in politics. So random, but I think I was just always interested in like making a change and, you know, having a strong opinion on
Yeah,
things. And so, I used to, I suppose when I was like 13, 14, I was like in the debate society at school and really went to lots of like protests. I remember when the student fees protest was happening, I was still in school. And so when I wanted to do that, I was like, well, I want to be prime minister. Like there was no question. It was like, why would I
yeah,
be some small like I want to be the biggest thing there is in that field. So yeah, when I went into music, I was like, well, I want, to be touring around the world and I want to be doing all these things. And so I've always been super ambitious. And I think that has, you know, that meant that music, has been my full-time and only job since I was 17, which is crazy because I know, 99% of people who uh, want to do music as a job, that's not their full-time profession,
yeah.
and so I feel so lucky and blessed that that has been my reality. But also at the same time, when you are so ambitious and a perfectionist like me, it also means that nothing's ever quite good enough. So I've really struggled with that. And I think so many artists feel that as well, where it's like you just keep moving your own goalposts, and if I think about like 14, 15-year-old me who was watching Tegan and Sarah on stage, like, I want to do this, I think she would be so impressed because I do that. I travel the world, I tour, I have a really amazing like dedicated fan base, kind of Tegan and Sarah-esque fan base. Um, but there's always more. There's always, oh, but
It's
I want to see
important to
that.
stop, right? It's important to
Yeah,
look
exactly.
back and take stock of what you've just said there, and just
Yeah,
back and go, I've got from here to here in this amount of time, and
yeah,
it's right. You should stop and pat yourself on the back and go, look, this is incredible what I've done already, and then,
yeah.
but it's also, as you say, it's equally important to move the goalposts and be ambitious, and that's an artist, right?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, completely. I think definitely that drive has, got me where I am and keeps kind of pushing me forward because, also I feel like any artist will say, "Oh yeah, I've wanted to quit so many times,"
Yeah,
And there's so many times where I've been like, I mean, I'm a big animal lover, and there's so many times I've been like, you know what? I'm going to quit this music thing and just work on a farm. I like it a sanctuary. I'll open a sanctuary or something. Um, I'll be, that dog trainer or whatever. I don't know. So there's so many times where I've done that, but it's like this is my calling. This is my favorite thing to do in the world. And so, I you keep going because ultimately, like the creativity and the creating music and then having it heard and resonating with people is like that's just so unbelievably special.
I'm going to ask you. I'm going to take you back home now. We've been clubbing. We're going back to your home county now. And I want you to tell me a track from an artist from that home county, please.
So I'm from London, and
You got a big
uh,
choice there.
I've got a big choice, but I'm from um, the borough of Camden, so I'm going to pick Amy Winehouse because she was such a huge inspiration for me, and was releasing. I remember when she was releasing music. I remember when she was in the press. I remember when she died, and that was such a like so devastating for me. And my favorite song of hers is "He Can Only Hold Her," which is on the Back to Black album. And yes, I'm like, it is on the Back to Black album, right? I'm gonna
Mhm.
check. Now I'm saying, oh yeah, I'm such a big fan. Yeah, it is. And yeah, that song just, ugh, that, I mean, we're talking about intros actually.
Yeah.
That song just the guitar and that just always gets me. And I think the thing that's so amazing about her, I mean, again, like her lyrics were so raw and honest and authentic and funny and cheeky. And she was, so many things that inspire me about her, but the biggest one is that she was really outspoken and really, you know, in brackets or quotation marks, like mouthy for a female artist at that time. There were so many female artists who were very polite and very, like friendly, audience friendly, and she was like, "Fuck that! I don't care about being that. I want to be me." And
And that's
she
not an
was
easy thing to do in a music industry.
no, my God, not at all. And she was vilified for it in the press, and she was not given an easy time at all. And I just,
But
you
ultimately,
know,
the fans spoke, right? And she was a
yeah,
global
I mean, she
superstar because
was,
the music
yeah,
rung way louder than any of the shit that the press wrote, right?
I got 100%. And that music was just so, so powerful. And yeah, that song just reminds me of being in the car with my dad, and he would play that album all the time. And um, I think that was also really important for me is seeing that my dad was such a big fan of women making music too. That was really important and special because it was very validating in a way, that
Yeah.
like, oh, he he like really likes this girl music almost, being a
Yeah.
kid. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Um, and yeah, I just love Amy Winehouse, and she'll always be like such a huge inspiration for me. And yeah, she was from well, she lived in Cam. She was from Southgate actually.
Yeah.
She was a North London girl.
Let's talk about Camden for a moment. If that's where home was, then tell me a little bit about. I mean, we've just a few months ago there was a fantastic documentary about Camden that was out featuring multiple artists, and obviously that Amy was discussed
Mm.
on that lots. And as an old man, I was lucky enough to be in bands in the mid 90s and got to enjoy Camden at that point and be part of that. And and I'm interested to know somebody from a different generation how important and growing up there. How important was Camden for you growing up?
Camden, I mean, gosh, as a teenager and younger, Camden was just the coolest. And it was really important because I remember, I mean, I would go there, like I'd just get on the bus and I'd go to, Camden Town and meet up with friends and go through the market, which they've now completely fucking blitzed over with. I mean, what's happened to Camden is so upsetting to me and so many people, and kind of shows how like gentrification and greed can just destroy the soul of a city to me. But I remember before all that, before they flattened parts of it to put up a Sports Direct, I remember going into like the old market and just going through all the shops and going to, sneaking in without an ID to loads of the small venues. And like, I think what Camden represented was this sort of essence of, I don't know, like it was bohemian and it was different. And it was like anyone who felt like they didn't fit in elsewhere, went to Camden, and especially all of the small venues. It was such an amazing place
Hmm.
for bands. And I remember when I was in my first band, when yeah, was literally 15, 16, um, like getting a fake ID. I think I got like a friend's who was older and maybe looked a tiny bit like me, and used that so I could play like in venues in Camden with my band. And I just remember that feeling of like all the greats played these venues, and now I could be the great, and it definitely, it felt like there was so much promise there and so much creativity, and definitely a very bohemian and very DIY essence to it, where it was very, also so many independent shops and independent venues. That was the big thing, was like it wasn't big business. It was the people, the community, which
Yeah,
was so cool. um
absolutely. And it's
which
important what you said earlier as well about, you know, it was so colourful, and bohemian's a great word as well to describe it. And you could be what you wanted to be, and no one was going to point a finger at you in Camden. And I think
Mm-mm.
that's so important. And
Exactly.
there's
Yeah.
not that many places where you can do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, difference was celebrated
Yeah,
majorly.
yeah. It's your last track now, and I'm going to. This is your opportunity to be a taste influencer, I think the kids call it, and it's to tell the listeners of the show a song that you love that you think they may not know.
Oh, like they may not know the song.
Mm.
Okay, okay, cool. Well, then I picked a slightly wrong song, because I picked a really big song at the moment, but I was like, maybe people won't know that I like this. But I can definitely pick a song that not many people will know. Um, there's this band called La Femme, which I feel like if you're French, you probably know them. Um, but I feel like in the UK or the West, not obviously France is in the West, but you know what I mean. Not in French speaking places, people might not know this band. And there's a song called Ouvre le monde, Ouvalemond, and it is such a banger. It's just such a great song. And I remember hearing this song. I think it was, I can't even remember. I mean, I think maybe it was one time I was in France and I overheard it and I Shazammed it, or maybe it was came up randomly on my Spotify suggested. I can't remember, but I just instantly was gripped by this song. It's so haunting. Like if you listen to it after this, you'll get what I mean. Like the way they've recorded this is, I think they must have recorded some of the, I mean, it's a full band, and I think, it was recorded in a studio, with, live instruments. But it's this like the way they've produced the vocals and some of the instruments, it's like it's in a big, almost cavernous room. It's really like haunting, and but also so like poppy, because it's so hooky. And yeah, it just makes me feel like I'm in this other time and place, and a woman of the world almost. I don't know. You feel like you're in a movie when you listen to it. So I really love that song.
We make it very easy for listeners to go and listen to that, because we put together a Spotify playlist with all the tracks that we've spoken about today, so people can go and explore them and listen to them. And obviously, we'll put your music on there as well. So we've been banging on about everybody else's tunes. It seems right that we should talk about your music. So what's happening? Tell me what's going on.
So I released my second album this year in May, called Matriarchy. That was a 14 track album. And yeah, it was my first album in 5 years. My first album was in 2019. And yeah, I did a lot of touring around Matriarchy. I played shows in places I'd never played shows before. I went to Australia, went to the US, did a lot in Europe and the UK, and yeah, it was amazing. And now I'm releasing a few other songs from that sort of didn't make it onto Matriarchy. So I'm releasing a small deluxe version. There's two extra songs, which is Matriarchy Queen Edition. And yeah, the first song that's come out of those two is called 2 Year Itch, which is about commitment scaring you, and the idea of being with someone forever being terrifying, even if they're perfect for you. And yeah, it's about the fears that we have in relationships and how we like to self-sabotage a lot of the time. And yeah, that's out. There's another song coming soon, and I'm going on tour again in the USA in December. And then yeah, next year, probably another album, because I think I've realized I really hate waiting around. I think music should be just written and put out there. I'm done with strategic timing. I just want to release music and keep doing it and keep touring.
Fantastic, fantastic. We'll get that wallpaper finished first.
Yeah, this is the number one priority.
Girl, if people want to keep up to speed with everything that's happening, releases and gigs and such, where's the best place to keep up to speed with you?
So I'm at Girly Music on all my socials, Instagram, TikTok, spelt Girli music. And then I have a website, girlymusic.com, and you can listen to all my songs on all the streaming sites, just Girly. On YouTube, I'm just Girly. Yeah, that's
Fantastic.
music.
Well, if it's all right with you, when this episode drops, we'll tag you in it. So if anybody's not following you already, we make it nice and easy for them to do that.
Amazing. Yeah, for sure.
Mate, I've had such a lovely time today. It's been such a nice
Oh,
chat.
thank you. Yeah, it was so nice to chat. It was like a proper trip down memory lane as well for me.
Wonderful. I'm going to press stop now, but don't go anywhere.